From the New York Sun, Congresswoman claims high-ranking Navy officer fired for refusing to hang picture of Trump.
No care.
The Pentagon confirms that Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield has been removed from her role at NATO. Democrats are attacking the Trump admin for the firing of one of the highest-ranking females in the military, with one claiming it was because she wouldn't hang up a picture of the president. There's another story that was posted by @Amuse on X. We don't know, we haven't confirmed it yet, but it's another one. I believe she's a colonel, and there's a photo of Trump and Hegseth and JD Vance flipped backwards, or the portraits where they should be are backwards. Some have argued that this is because she has not yet received the portraits, but the rumor, as reported by Amuse, I'd say unconfirmed reporting, is that she is outright refusing to show the images of Donald Trump. This is beyond constitutional crisis levels. You've got the judiciary issuing more injunctions against Trump than basically, I think there was like 200 universal injunctions ever issued, and Trump has something like 81 of them so far. So he has over almost one half of all universal injunctions ever issued, which are unconstitutional. This is what they refer to as a judicial coup. The judiciary is seeking to obstruct the executive branch, asserting authorities they do not have. You now have stories starting to emerge where high-ranking military officials are openly defying the president, outright saying, "We will outlast him and we will defy him."
No, I mean that is. I don't remember the specific article, but there is an article in the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that is the law for the military, that says that if you are doing these type of things, conduct unbecoming, insubordination, things I forget the wording, so I'm not going to try and get into it. But this is actually actionable by the military legally.
I have a question for you guys. With this individual who was removed, arguably because she would not show Trump's picture, I believe that shows a disdain for Trump, but whatever. And this report, this other woman. Do you believe that there is a possibility that if Trump were to issue a lawful order, they would disobey it?
Yes, completely.
Some of them, for sure.
But yeah. I'm referring to these particular high-ranking officials who refuse to show his picture.
I think there's a good chance, yeah.
Just the
but lawful orders.
And I think it's fine to fire them. I mean, I don't see any. There's no gray area here. You work in the military. You serve at the pleasure of the president. That's clear cut to me.
My concern is not that Trump can't fire them. Of course he can, and he did. My concern is that we are seeing growing cohorts of individuals in high-ranking levels of government that are in active defiance or usurping of power.
Well, that's always been the case, right? I mean, that was true in his first administration. Absolutely, like the deep state, the intellect,
I would argue that if we go deep on it, the deep state was in complete control, and Trump was the upstart bringing back some kind of constitutional order.
In 2016. When
Trump got elected, that was when an element of constitutional republicanism actually returned to the government.
Yeah, I think that's true. I wouldn't argue that. And then I think it regained a lot of power under Biden. I think the bureaucratic state's out of control. It's got to be reined in. That's why I was talking about the REINS Act. We're trying to pass at the state level and the federal level, but there's got to be something done to strip the bureaucrats of their power.
I think but to the point you were making earlier, you were saying that the escalation is making things worse.
The escalation with the judiciary. I think
Just in
it's
general,
a problem to ignore the checks and balance system. I think the checks and balances are important. I think we need to reform the justice system. I'd like to see it raised to the ground and restructured. I mean, I could go all day about this. I hate many elements of the justice system, but we have to have it. It's a necessary evil in a actual free country that we have a justice system and that we have those kinds of checks and balances. So I think the question needs to be, what do we do to reform it? What do we do to get it back under control? What do we do to make sure that our country still has our constitutional system that it was structured to have?
We have
versus just saying we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, we have no constitutional means of doing what you're asking.
We do. We just have a bunch of weak politicians who aren't doing their jobs.
What is the constitutional means?
I mean, the means is, again, Congress taking action. We need to pass laws that would rein in the bureaucratic state.
But again, I understand that. But that's a pipe dream.
It's not a pipe dream. I mean, we're passing this at the state level every day right now. Why can't we pass it federally? It's inexcusable.
Because Congress is split basically 50-50.
Well, because the American people aren't doing their job. They're not holding their feet to the fire. They're not demanding it. They're not breathing down their necks like they should be. But we can get these kinds of things done. And we did have a huge ruling last year with Chevron deference getting overturned. That's going to be really important for trying to rein some of this back in as well. But we need to be pursuing those kinds of activities. And I think that the mentality I see happening right now is like the left is really bad and they don't follow the law and they're throwing it all down the river. So we're going to do the same thing. And that ends us in a place that's very bad. I really do think that could end us in an actual civil war. I think that could create a huge schism in our country where it maybe doesn't exist anymore. Whereas if we actually found ways to organize and work together and actually put pressure, I do it. I mean,
that's what Trump's victory is.
And to some extent, that's a good thing. There's many things that I like about Trump. There's many policies I back him on. And I think if he pursues those kinds of mechanisms for reining in the judiciary, I'd back him. But to say we just throw away the checks and balances, we no longer have any check on the presidency, that's not what he's saying. But that's not what some people are saying around him.
If as we've already determined,
and I want to say,
judiciary,
I don't think he has to act in this case. I was saying earlier, I think the Supreme Court's ruling on this case is very mushy. They said he had to facilitate the return. Legally, that doesn't mean he has to go and get this guy. It just means he has to cooperate if they want to return him. So I actually don't think that he's even legally in the wrong right now.
We know the judiciary is acting outside the confines of the Constitution.
Often.
Literally, universal injunctions are unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And Trump has almost half of all ever issued in 250 some odd years or whatever.
So he just doesn't have to listen to the judiciary at all the rest of his presidency.
If the courts tell Trump to do something illegal, he must defy that. If the courts are acting unconstitutionally, Trump must uphold the Constitution by stopping those actions. That's what the executive branch should
Begs
do.
the question, though, who decides what's legal?
So the issue is the judiciary has been unchecked. How should the executive branch check the judiciary?
I would say it would be by lobbying and organizing and working to pass laws that would rein it in.
But that's Congress. You're talking about Congress. Congress is there's three branches.
The president has a lot of control over Congress, especially right now. I mean, he could be doing.
Hold on. There's three branches. Each can check each other, right? Mm-hmm. What is the executive branch mechanism for checking a rogue judiciary?
They could nominate judges. Well, now that it's full, but that's the executive's check on the judiciary. Their ability
There's other checks.
I think that's the main one, that they get to nominate judges, and people would argue that Trump nominated 3
Supreme Court justices?
Yeah.
Trump can instruct the executive branch not to listen to any other branch. He's the head with sole executive power, and this is what executive orders are, and he can't do that. And it's only by Trump playing fair or being nice in agreement does he do anything otherwise. So typically we have in this country is an unasked question, I suppose, for hundreds of years of if each of these branches are independent and equal and they check each other, then how is it that a president can issue an executive order to federal law enforcement not to enforce the law? Isn't that the legislative branch putting a check in the executive saying you have to do this? Would the judge then say, no, you have to do it? But the president could just say, no. And that's exactly what happened with DACA. Obama just said, we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's in defiance of the judiciary and the legislative branch because the executive has sole authority over its executive functions. The executive naturally is arguably, well, actually, there is no most powerful because the Supreme Court issues rulings that affect the entirety of smaller and lesser jurisdictions. In this regard, the check is quite simple. When the courts are rogue, you do not abide by them. That's it.
But then how do you decide that as the executive? Who decides that if the judiciary is rogue? Does the executive decide that?
This is a constitutional crisis in which I said it's a largely unasked questions over nearly 250 years. Right now, universal injunctions are plainly unconstitutional. The way the law is supposed to work, English common law particularly, which we are based off of, is that a judge can issue a ruling pertaining to the parties before him. Class action lawsuits exist so that he can affect larger groups of people. But the class action is still pertaining only to those individuals party to the class action. Instead, what's happening is nearly all Democrat judges, nearly, not all, but nearly all, are saying Trump wants 3 individuals transferred prisons because they're men in women's prisons. Nah, from now on, all prisons must have, anyone who's trans. What? That's a sweeping unilateral decree. Judges don't have that authority. No one is stopping them. Now, the problem is we can't rely on Congress. They're dysfunctional. And there's no argument of, yes, but they shouldn't be. Well, of course they shouldn't be, but they are. The only hope we have then is an executive branch with executive authorities to be like, we're not going to abide by unconstitutional actions.
Or like rectify Congress. The Romans fell apart when they gave up on Congress, basically.
How do you rectify Congress?
There's a lot of, there's a lot of laws we could work to change, especially around financing. That
Congress is not going to do that. Congress polices itself in that regard. They give themselves raises, but never bar themselves from serving multiple terms or being restricted on how they campaign.
That's true, but go ahead.
Police don't police themselves, as it were, right?
That's true, but that's because nobody is pressuring them. You have Trump, who has the biggest bully pulpit in the world. He has unprecedented levels of support. He has a cult-like following. If he were to come out and say, we are going to campaign, we are going to work to get Congress to pass this law, and I'm going to work to get people to primary everybody.
CR.
But nobody puts it
Seriously.
Yeah, they could barely pass a CR. So, like, I don't know.
They have a two-seat majority with squishy Democrats and Republicans, so both sides are at an
and Thomas Massey acting like a leftist. So I don't even
Easy.
I don't even know how you square this. So like I don't think he could get all of the Republicans on the same page. But I think the key here is if Congress delegates enough of their power to the executive branch, eventually they're going to have to try to claw it back, and the executive will just be more powerful. I think quote equal branches is a myth, and throughout the United States history, we've always seen some branches take more power and become more powerful than the others in a kind of a cyclical way. Right now, it seems as though the executive branch is growing. The power of the executive
media
is growing.
Sorry to interrupt.
Well, not only mass media,
one guy
but
can speak to a million people.
So long as Congress is dysfunctional, they will continue to atrophy, and if they have slim majorities one way or another, their power will atrophy because they won't be able to pass stuff. And that's just really what it comes down to. Because if they can't exercise their power with majorities in the House or the Senate, you can't get anything done. And
thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.